Hello there. Welcome to Breakfast All Day. I am Christy. That is Matt. That is Alonso. Next up for us is a documentary which is streaming, I want to say, and then it's going to play on MSNBC in October. It's called The
Yes.
Way I See It.
So The Way I See It is a doc primarily about Pete Souza and his work as the official White House photographer for the Obama administration. He had previously worked as an official White House photographer for the Reagan administration. And one of the things he says that's really interesting is he talks about being the photographer for the iconic Republican president of our generation and the iconic Democrat president of our generation. And part of why this doc happened is, and part of what really thrust him into the limelight and the books that he has subsequently written, including Shade, was that he opened an Instagram account and started kind of trolling Trump because he got to see what it kind of took to be president and what the office requires. And he doesn't think Trump has that at all. And so he's got, a few million followers on Instagram, and he's become fairly outspoken, which is something that you've never really heard from a official photographer for the White House. And, among other things, he thinks it's pretty telling that the Trump administration doesn't really give their photographers the access that he'd had in the past. The movie then starts to tilt into, in more than a few places, how much Souza thinks Obama is the best thing since sliced bread, which, understandable. Like, he worked very closely with him for 8 years and saw things in a way that I think a lot of us never do. I, for the most part, really liked this film. I think it gets distracted a little bit. But for what it sets out to do, to kind of give the point of view of this guy who's had this kind of unique view of two different presidents, both having two terms and in two wildly different eras, it's fascinating to hear from a guy like that. And I think that Don Porter does a good job bringing that out in him and putting together a relatively compelling film that then ends. I mean, look, like, it is pretty heavy-handed with his messaging, which is not unexpected from both the subject matter and the director behind the film.
Right. Don Porter also directed. Yeah, she also directed the John Lewis Good Trouble, which we talked about a few weeks back.
Oh, did she? Okay,
she did, Alonso. Does that help from your experience?
So much sense now. Yeah,
Wow.
no. Because I had a lot of the same thoughts about this that I had about the John Lewis doc. And again, I'm not to go after this woman or these films. This is an ongoing trend now where you have these docs that are clearly, if not directly commissioned by, they're certainly made with under the auspices of their subject. And more, as these start to stack up, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary, the Joan Rivers documentary, like as we've been seeing more and more of these kind of celebrity / political documentaries over the last few years, they're starting to feel like those portraits that rich people used to commission in the Renaissance, where they're like surrounded by angels, and it's this like idealized version. It's like, yes, you'll get an occasional acknowledgement of they did this thing that was a mistake, or they, whatever, they had this setback. But for the most part, they're kind of hagiographical. Yeah. And so it's like, I watched the new Frederick Wiseman movie this week, the 4.5-hour City Hall, which is riveting and brilliant. If you can rent it from the New York Film Festival, I urge you to do so. If not, I think it's opening in November. And this is a guy who makes these docs where, like, there's no music, there's no narration. He plants the camera. He has long takes of, like, city council meetings, and they're riveting. And like, these movies are so much packaged to sell you a person or a thing, like, and they so often tie into that person's like lecture. Like, I think the kickoff movie for that was Inconvenient Truth, but like, you look at the Beastie Boys doc, you look at Pete Souza, like, he clearly has this, when he was doing his book tour, he has this lecture and slideshow, and the movie is kind of jumping in and out of that as its structure. And so, yeah, it as Matt would say, it does what it says on the box, but I'm kind of getting fed up with this brand of nonfiction filmmaking that is basically a tarted up infomercial in a lot of ways. plus the fact that MSNBC produced this movie. And I feel like I wish that MSNBC and other so-called like lefty news outlets could allow themselves to have a deeper discussion about the Obama years and the Obama legacy. It's like, was he, a much better human being than Donald Trump is? Unquestionably. But like, it does no one any favors to look back at the 8 years of his presidency and not get into some of the trickier issues, especially when this movie ends with like, protests about Black Lives Matter and protests about the environment. It's like, you know what? This stuff didn't all start with Trump. Like, Ferguson happened under Obama. Standing Rock happened under Obama. Let's not pretend that in 2017 there was suddenly this seismic shift that made all this stuff go south. A lot of this stuff has been shitty for a long time under both parties, and to not acknowledge that is as dishonest as what they do on Fox News. Okay.
And yet no, that was good. And yet it is a call to action. Right? It is definitely a call to people to get out and vote, and more specifically to vote this person out of office and to return us to a time when there was, dignity, which has been documented, right? And you see, looking at the Reagan years too, looking at Reagan and at Obama, two presidents who couldn't be more different. But the underlying premise of it is these are men who understood the weight of the office, the dignity of the office, the intellectual rigor required for the office, how to behave like a fucking human being in situations, things like that. So, I mean, it is advocacy journalism in that regard,
Alonso, I totally hear where you're coming from, because even the stuff about Reagan is so soft-handed. Like, you come away with it like, oh, what a cute little old couple they were.
Yeah. I mean, sure, he could have done something more about AIDS, but the tree thing I thought was fascinating, because they're basically acknowledging how staged a lot of this stuff is. And I was like, shocked that the Reagans allowed somebody else to film them doing a bit, essentially, and like, creating this fictional moment for Pete to photograph. But then
they
also,
were actors.
That's true. Oh yeah,
but the other thing we forget is that like so much of the coverage around Reagan at that time too was also like how he had a joke for everything, and he was joking all the time, right? That and the fucking jelly beans.
Right.
So that kind of fits in. It's like, oh yeah, right. That's what he was like, or at least that's kind of the thing they put out there. But yeah, it definitely is soft pedaling. But that being said, like, if the takeaway is this is what this guy's like, and explaining why he's finally speaking out, finally maybe a strong word, but why he's speaking out, I get it. I think but yeah, I do think it's a little. It's certainly not some investigative, like, blowing the secret out.
No.
I mean, right. What I found interesting is, and to me, this is the best part, is when he shares the stuff that you don't expect. Like when he talks about like the jokes that Obama would make, like, oh, we were going to make out in the car. Like, yeah, okay. I want to hear somebody's take on the presidency when no one's really paying attention. So like when he says, Obama talked about the presidency being like a relay race, right? Like you get a bunch of stuff, and then you're going to pass it on, right? Like that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. Like that's what I think is more interesting. But that's not the movie we're watching.
mean, as a look at what this guy's job was and how it worked and where it took him and stuff, all that's really interesting. And certainly, like, yes, I acknowledge there's a lot of great stuff that came out of the Obama administration. And again, just on a human level, this was a guy who not only understood the dignity of the office, but also understood, like, how to be empathetic and how to talk to people. I think even one of the captions from his I went and looked at his Instagram, the Pete Souza Instagram account, and one of the things he acknowledges was like, Trump just gave a speech where he used us to talk about his supporters. Whereas, and then he shows Obama after Katrina or after these natural disasters would go to these red states and talk to people who probably didn't vote for him and was still extended to them just human decency, which the guy who's there now cannot be bothered to do.
Yeah, it's interesting for a couple of different reasons. The pulling back the curtain as far as what the day in, day out of the job is like. I like process. I like things about how people do what they do. That's interesting to me, to see how he gets certain shots, what the job requires. And I do think it's interesting that he is one of many people who have worked in the White House, who have worked under both, Republicans and Democrats, who feel that now they are morally compelled to speak up. Right.
True.
I mean, we just yesterday saw this woman, Olivia Troy, who was Pence's right-hand woman on the coronavirus task force, who was a career public servant. We're seeing career civil servants and inherently apolitical job in theory
had worked in the Obama White House,
right,
yeah,
saying that like I can't be silent anymore. So that he is one of them, and that he can make his points in such a persuasively visual way is really interesting. So I enjoyed this, but is it deep? No. Is it persuasive? Yes. So I'm saying 7.5.
I said 6.5. It is a slick package, and I would say basically, if this sounds like a movie you want to see, then you'll be glad you saw it, and if it doesn't sound like a movie you want to see, then you probably won't see it.
I give it an 8.
Okay.
You stole my line.
There you go.
That's what it says in the box.
7.3 is our number.
So thanks for watching, everybody. And do register to vote. Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay, and follow us on the social medias at BeFastAllDay. We appreciate you spending another week here with us. Have a good week. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.